Welcome to English Through Ideas, where we learn English through powerful ideas. Today, we're diving into a genuinely brilliant book by Henry Hazlitt called Economics in One Lesson. But, we aren't just going to sit here and talk about money or business. Instead, we're going to use this book as a really powerful mental model. It's essentially a completely new way of looking at the world that will honestly help you become a deeper, sharper, and just much smarter thinker. To kick off our journey today, I want to ask you kind of a strange question. Can destruction ever make us richer? I mean, it sounds totally crazy, right? Obviously, breaking things is bad. But the funny thing is, as human beings, we're so easily tricked by what we can immediately see with our own eyes. Our brains just love the obvious. So let's dive into this mystery and see exactly how our eyes can deceive our minds. Okay, here is the absolute core lesson that Henry Hazlitt wants to teach us. He rates, the art of economics consists in looking not merely at the immediate, but at the longer effects of any act or policy. It consists in tracing the consequences, not merely for one group, but for all groups. So, putting that into clear, everyday English, really good critical thinkers actively train themselves to look past what happens right in this exact moment. They search for the hidden, long-term effects, and they consider how a decision impacts absolutely everyone, not just the people standing right in front of them. And this idea is perfectly captured in our master story for today. It's famously known as the parable of the broken window. So imagine a quiet street. Suddenly, a young boy throws a heavy brick right through the window of a baker's shop. Smash! The baker runs out, and he is absolutely furious. But of course, the boy's already gone. Soon enough, a crowd gathers on the street to look at the damage, just staring at all this broken glass scattered over the baker's fresh bread. Now, here is where human psychology gets really interesting. The baker complains that a new window is going to cost him $250, and the people in the crowd, they start to whisper to each other, well, maybe this isn't so bad. Think about the glassmaker, the glazier. He's going to get $250. He'll take that money and spend it at other shops, and then those shops will spend it too. The crowd actually talks themselves into believing that this destructive kid is a public benefactor. They think he's doing a good deed, purely because they see this visible chain of new business happening right before their eyes. But hold on a second. Let's look at what they are completely missing. On one side, we have exactly what we see, the baker handing money to the glazier. But on the flip side, we have what we don't see. The baker was actually planning to spend that $250 that very same afternoon on a brand new suit. But because he had to buy a window instead, the tailor never gets the money. We clearly see the glazier working, but we never see the tailor because his job was quietly, invisibly destroyed by that brick. So, the absolutely crucial point is this. The community as a whole is not one bit richer. No net new wealth was created. The baker just has a window now instead of having a window and a new suit. The glazier's gain in business is exactly equal to the tailor's loss in business. The destruction of that window only changed the direction of the wealth. It didn't magically create more of it. So let's scale this up and see how this mental model applies to real life. What about huge government projects? A lot of times, politicians will propose building, say, a massive new public bridge. They'll stand on television, point to it and say, look at this magnificent bridge. It's going to create jobs. It's going to bring wealth. But Hazlitt challenges us to use our new mental model here. We need to look right past that highly visible bridge and find the invisible tailor. Let's just break this down step by step. Step 1, the government doesn't actually have its own money, so it has to collect taxes from the citizens to pay for this. Step 2, the bridge is built, and workers are hired. We can clearly see them working in their hard hats. But step 3, that's the invisible part. Because the taxpayers had to hand their money over to the government, they now have less money to spend on their own clothes, cars, or food. So for every single public job created to build that bridge, a private job is destroyed somewhere else in the economy. It's a classic case of the seen versus the unseen. On one side, you have this beautiful, towering bridge. You can drive over it, you can point at it, you can take selfies with it. It is 100% visible. But on the other side, you have the unbuilt homes, the unmade cars, the unmade clothes. These are all the things that everyday taxpayers would have bought if they'd simply kept their own money. You literally have to use your imagination to see them, because they were never even allowed to come into existence. All right, let's test out our thinking on another really common economic fear. Do machines destroy jobs? Whenever there's a wave of unemployment, people naturally tend to blame new technology. The immediate thought is, well, if a machine does the work of 10 men, then 9 men are permanently ruined. It's a super old fear, but is it actually the whole truth?
Hazlitt brings up this incredibly famous example from the philosopher Adam Smith. Centuries ago, a worker making metal pins entirely by hand could barely scrape together 20 pins in a single day. But then, with the invention of new machinery, one single worker could suddenly produce 4,800 pins a day. Now, if you're only looking at the short term, you'd probably panic and think, this is a disaster. 99% of pin makers just permanently lost their jobs.
But wait, remember our golden rule. We have to look at all groups over the long term. And here is what actually unfolds. First off, totally new jobs are created just to build, transport, and fix these new machines. Second, because pins are being pumped out so much faster, the price of a pin drops dramatically. Third, consumers are now spending way less on pins, which leaves them with extra money just sitting in their pockets. And finally, they take that extra money and spend it on entirely different things, which sparks new demand and creates invisible jobs in entirely new industries. Now, having said all that, Hazlitt is very quick to clarify that we shouldn't be cold or heartless about this. He tells us we must always keep an eye on Joe Smith. Joe Smith represents the actual human being who lost his job to that new machine. He has a family to feed, and he is going through real, very visible pain. We absolutely must care about Joe and help him transition to a new path. But, and this is key, we cannot smash the machine and deliberately hold back the progress of all human civilization just to artificially save his specific, outdated job. To really wrap our heads around how wealth actually works, we need to master a crucial piece of vocabulary: purchasing power. This simply means the actual amount of real goods and services you can buy with a unit of money. Real wealth isn't about having a giant wheelbarrow full of paper cash. Real wealth is about what that cash can actually trade for: a safe house, good food, a solid education.
And that brings us perfectly to the tricky concept of inflation. Inflation happens when a government just prints and creates more and more money out of thin air. When there's suddenly too much money floating around, the prices of everyday items just shoot up. Hazlitt actually calls inflation a hidden tax because it tricks us. We look at our paychecks, we see bigger numbers, and we feel like we're getting richer. But invisibly, right under our noses, our purchasing power is dropping. We can actually afford less than we could before. If you had to draw a picture of bad thinking, it would look exactly like this. Bad thinking prioritizes this huge, highly visible short-term benefit for one very specific group of people. But it completely ignores the massive, long-term costs that invisibly crush everybody else later on. Good thinkers, the kind of thinkers we're trying to become, train their brains to always look for that second, hidden consequence. Hazlitt uses this really profound phrase to describe the person who ends up paying that invisible price. He calls him the forgotten man. And here's the tough truth. The forgotten man is you. It's the everyday citizen who is quietly, completely invisibly forced to pay higher taxes and higher prices for policies that only ever benefit a really loud, visible, special interest group. A sloppy thinker just forgets about him, but a brilliant thinker always remembers he's there. At the end of the day, this whole explainer isn't just an economics lesson. It's a profound tool for self-improvement. Good thinkers actively look beyond the obvious. They refuse to be tricked by short-term illusions. When the rest of the world is just staring at the broken glass on the sidewalk or clapping for a shiny new bridge, the intelligent thinker is quietly in the background, calculating the hidden costs and the invisible consequences. It's literally a superpower for your mind. So I want to leave you with this one question. What invisible consequences will you look for today? Try applying this mental model to your own life, to the choices you make, and to the news you're reading. Train yourself to see the unseen. Thank you for learning with English Through Ideas. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe for more ideas, more English, and more growth.